Like you said, the relationships are what make things go. That's how I got this opportunity. Goodness, my relationships in the industry have helped me so much. People in manufacturing in Connecticut are so generous. They will tell you where they stepped in the wrong direction. They will be good to you, and I found that along the way. And every time I've gotten out there, I haven't regretted it. That's for sure.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. I'm with Tina Bracone, president of BMS Aerospace. Tina, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, it's my pleasure, and it is the Made in America podcast. So we're going to start off with our same two questions. What do you make, Tina, and why do you make it?
So we make complex sheet metal assemblies and machine assemblies, component assemblies, and that means we make all from the detail level all the way up. And the reason we make it is we kind of fell into it. Quite frankly, for me, I kind of fell into it, but we continue to make it because we enjoy it. Right? We enjoy what we're doing. We enjoy our staff, and
so let's for people that maybe aren't fully versed in manufacturing or what's going on, what is a complex metal part?
So we make turbine engine components that go into both that go into aerospace applications and industrial gas turbine applications. They also we also do some naval, and so that would be like the hot section of the engine. So Chinook helicopter, the LCAX, that's a boat that it goes on. And then like generators that like power towns when the power goes out.
Like portable generators?
They're kind of portable, like semi-truck portable.
Portable.
Like they're installed on site.
So not the one you bring camping, but something that could theoretically move with a truck driving it.
No, yeah, exactly. And so inside all these engines, and there's sheet metal components, and they're typically attached to machine components, and then they're attached in different ways, right, by either welding or brazing, and we make the components and the assemblies.
So the parts that you guys make for, say, like for an engine is something that's actually in the combustion part where the engine gets really hot?
Yes.
And so does that mean that these products have to have like certain parameters, certain tolerances, like certain metals that they use? Like how does that?
All of the above, yeah.
All of the above.
So they typically, I'm not an engineer here, but they're typically made out of really high temp alloys. They have coatings and their parameters are extremely tight. So the tolerance is tight. You want them to run as cool as possible. So the better you're tolerancing, the better that's going to go.
Has the business always been involved in the aerospace?
No.
Well, then maybe we should talk about that. How did it start?
So we started, like every good story about a company is in a garage. My father was a metal spinner. He actually worked for an aerospace company in Connecticut and a bunch of small metal spinning companies. He worked for Sikorsky, and that's actually where we got our first machines from. But he was a sheet metal spinner, and my grandfather was a welder. They started a company together, and my grandfather had his. They're very particular to tell you they both started their own individual companies in the same four walls, and that's really how we started. And in the beginning, it was offload work, and we didn't obviously there weren't certification. They didn't have the certifications yet, and then they got all the certifications necessary. NADCAP. We're a repair station too. We do FAA repair, YASA, AS 9100, all the things. And now we're a women-owned small business. But in the beginning, we were just making parts. And when you hear metal spinning, you typically think of, light fixtures, pots and pans, all this stuff. But we do.
You say metal spinning, I think of like a loom making a sweater. So maybe we should clarify like what metal spinning means.
Yeah. So it's not so. You're not that far off. I mean, a loom is a little far off, but it's almost like a pottery wheel on its side, right? Where the metal is in sheet and you form it into typically a round form or whatever
So
is necessary.
when I think of like sheet metal, I'm thinking of like a long, thin sheet of metal.
Yes.
And then I'm confused about like, so then what do you do to it? So you're just saying it wraps in a circle, then you're...
Okay, so either it's in a blank where it's a square or round of metal and then you make the form out of that, or and that's like think spaceship, right? I think everyone's seen the video of Elon Musk's video of they're doing metal spinning for the nose of a spaceship, and it is, I mean, the lathe is probably the size of 3 of us, 15 feet tall, the piece, and they're using that's how you make it, And then you also weld it out of rings, which were Aerospace Welding. We started, my grandfather was an experimental welder for Pratt & Whitney for over 40 years. And we got all of our certifications in that. And we do, traditional TIG welding, and then we also do spot and seam welding as well. And
which is how you take the sheet. So just to close the loop here. So I take the sheet, I'm putting it on the loom, and then the loom. Sorry, yeah, no, not the loom. But yeah, so I set it up, and then what am I doing to it? Like I'm taking the lathe and doing what? Like
so you roll and weld it, and then you put it on a spinning lathe, and then you basically make it to its form, and you do that by utilizing rollers. Or spoons, different tooling, and there's a male and female tools. You could go either way, and they're pre-made. Everything comes down to the tooling, right? That's why we can hold the tolerances we can hold. There's a ton of engineering ahead of time, and one of the things we make a lot of all different sizes, shapes and sizes of them is combustion liners. The joke is, now everyone have you seen the solo stoves, right?
For sure.
Okay.
I own one even.
Yeah. So that is a basic, principle for a combustor, that it's regulating where the fire and the smoke goes, right? Only these are for engines,
right.
And they have a lot more holes and a lot more tolerances and, swirlers on the top and all sorts of fun stuff. So, but combustors are made this way, and we make all different shapes and sizes.
So is a solo stove sort of made using a similar, obviously not the same tolerances, but so the similar process, do you think?
I don't know how they make it, but probably. I think they probably also utilize stamping as well, but they definitely roll, weld, and size it, which is another portion, right? So we also size material on, and they're called expansion dies, those types of machines. And we also, hydroform some of the parts to preform them and then bring them in. Typically, if you have a part that's really hard to make another way, you make it, you utilize a portion of metal spinning.
As opposed to making, well, like if you didn't use metal spinning to make it, what would be the other alternative to make it?
You could do, stamping, hydroforming, but you typically can't get all the way into the form. It requires like really expensive progressive dies and a lot of operations, and But I would say at a small quantity range, as in like 1,000 or less, even up to like 5,000 or less, that's the cheaper way to do it.
Is through spinning.
Is through spinning, yeah. But we utilize all of it together. Like that's where we started. And we started, we made stuff for the old cable waves, which I don't even know that they're still.
Cable waves?
Yeah, like remember the big like, what are they called? Like how you got TV, right? The dishes, like we made parts for them in the 80s.
Okay.
And that's how we started. So it's come a long way from there to now making integral parts to.
So it sounds like you did start off sort of with aerospace, because you said overflow work out of Sikorsky was like originally a big part of the work that you guys did?
Actually, yeah, so it wasn't overflow work out of Sikorsky. We bought our lathes from Sikorsky because they shut down the division. What was pretty cool, my father got to buy the lathes he first learned how to work on, and they came in on a flatbed, and he bought them all off of them. They decided to liquidate that. But we started off like way back in the day, which is now MB Aerospace. They may have been purchased now, doing work for like Delta and UTD and all those places that are still around today. They've been bought and sold probably half a dozen times and have different names, but second tier work is where we started. And then we went after first tier work. We also did work for Allied Signal, and then they have which are now Honeywell.
Right.
And AFCO Lycoming, because they were local.
That makes a ton of sense. So start off in the garage with your dad and your grandpa. Probably you weren't involved in the business at that time.
No. No.
So what made you decide to try and get engaged in the business?
Oh, like reluctantly. So like every good story starts, there was no way not to. So growing up, if you were, you know, a female in the family, like you went in, not that we were treated any differently, but like you did paperwork, you filed, you did all those things. A male in the family, you swept the floors. I mean, we all counted inventory. It was the worst 2 weeks, you know, of every family member's summer, you know? And we all worked there since we were kids. We were almost like, you know, shop kids, stamping presses, all that good stuff. And then when I was in college, I did the bookkeeping for them. I actually at the time wanted to become an accountant, and I had done help, you know, like the filing, the basic stuff for my mom for a while, and I took over doing that. And I would fly back and forth because at the time you couldn't. Like now, you could probably bookkeep for a company anywhere in the world, right? At the time, like we were, you know.
Where were you living?
Dial-up internet, I think, you know. I was living in Florida. Yeah. And so I would fly back every few weeks. But there was someone in-house that did like the basic stuff, and I would cut the checks. And then after summer, after college, I took a summer off, planning on going to law school. And the person who kind of like ran my dad's shop, he did like the purchasing, the scheduling, all that stuff, was retiring and left for the summer. And was leaving in the summer. Hey, can you come on for the summer? And I never left. And I just, one project led to the next, to the next, to the next. And it was actually really great. The economy took a turn at the time, and shortly after, and it was kind of survival mode, right? Do or die. And we recognized we had to adapt. So when the economy, I think everyone recalls 2008, 2009, and that was just like, I was just a few years in. And then we also recognized there was a government sequester. We were so much in defense work. We lost 40% of work overnight. Wild, right? That's like... that's tough, yeah. That's tough. But we were lean. My father always operated at lean, but it became real evident that we needed to diversify in sales. And so we started specifically going after different sectors, defense, industrial gas turbine, aerospace, and commercial, and we tried to really balance. And then we went after new make and repair work in both of those arenas, so that we'd be a little bit more... So sort of like those 4 places, and then looking at new and repair in both. So a little more recession-proof, you know, not that you ever can be, but at least if one market goes, other ones move. And that was my focus for a few years, all while, hey, if we're going to get into this, you know, OEM aerospace direct, we need to be a different company to do this, all while transforming. I mean, we renovated, we built, put on buildings, we got new certifications, you know. And this was a project you were leading? Yeah, it was a project I championed for years. So how did you think, I mean, there's a lot of people I think that are out there, you know, well, we just went through kind of one of those difficult events. When you were thinking through how to diversify and do it effectively, how did you think through that? Like, how did you start and how did you execute it? So diversification, well, really it was easy because we had all our eggs in one basket. So that's an easy fix for us personally. But really we looked at the different markets and what happens. So it was joke. So we're sitting at a table and I say to my dad, you know, I can't believe this. He said, you know, this happened in the 80s, this happened in the 90s, it's happened in the 2000s, it's going to happen again. And I said, all right, well, how do we insulate for it? And at the time, you know, I still am. I'm a numbers junkie. I'm really into like economics and how to utilize data. And that's where we started. Was what went up when everything else went down for us. Was it just because it was the line and dumb luck, or was it because it's a sector? And that's what we really looked at. And now I think my balance is off again. I think it's a constant, as a leader, and most people I'm sure have like a business development team and sales team, you have to constantly be looking at it. Because, you know, you'll swing for the fences, you'll get one big opportunity, and then it'll throw you off. And then you got to go in the other direction for another. So do you look at it that's just, I think, an interesting topic. You know, do you try and keep it evenly balanced across all the areas you just talked about? I try and keep a balance. Even is not, it's probably not realistic. It's not even what I have. I also try then, so that you get to the next layer, you have to do that with your customers too, right? So it's not just So you can have a customer, you do aviation, aerospace, et cetera. You also want to be balanced with, you don't have 40% of your business in one customer. And
Customer
others.
concentration is always a challenge. And you see that a lot, especially people that deal with primes, because you can get addicted to just like mining that relationship.
Oh, it happens to us all the time. Like it's, also, opportunity breeds opportunity, right? So then you get another, you're not going to turn a customer down. You just need to be hustling on the other side to build another one up, or to build another. And we're small. So we're getting bigger, right? But we started off small, and after a recession with a tight group. And so we had to be really careful that the growth didn't consume us, right? You could only develop one customer at a time, one big customer, one prime at a time. You have to remember we started second, third tier. So each new prime relationship it's a lot of work. This is what I think you guys do as your side gig. So I think all the things that go into it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so interesting because you talk to, I talk to a lot of manufacturers, as you well know, and I've seen more people tell me that they tried to diversify and failed than people who tell me that they tried and succeeded. And I don't know why that is. I mean, I would say for one thing, I hear a lot of people trying to go kind of to a totally different industry. Like I know a few people who said, aerospace goes up and down, but if we also do medical, then we'll kind of like insulate. But I think those are maybe too far apart be able to.
So I did Lazy Man's Guide, right? So we said to ourselves, what do we already do and do well? Well, we make combustors and we do them well. Well, we make them for defense. Can we make them for aerospace? Can we make them for industrial gas turbine? What else can we do? Do I go after all type? We get solicited for all types of spinning work and sheet metal work, and we go after it. And sometimes we say, hey, this really, we can't do it anymore. Our costs will just be too high. Why would you pay an aerospace company to do these things? And we just hand it off to a friend.
So you do even have quoting discipline. Like you understand that you know what you do and know what you don't do.
Oh, we have to. We don't have a choice. We keep a lean team. We've grown quickly. We've really transformed our business over the last 5 to 10 years, and you have to have discipline and knowing what to do and what not to do, because it just consumes you. You could take on a project that seems really fun, right? Just because it's fun, all your engineers are into it. It's like but it'll consume all your time. So you really
take
can't.
Focus off the ball.
Yeah, you can't.
So I guess let me ask this question. One of the things you hear a lot in aerospace is, because all the certifications, because of the tight tolerances, the high quality demands, it's a higher, typically lower volume, higher value, i.e. higher cost product. But you're also able to make product for the generators, like the gas turbine business, that's still successful?
Industrial gas turbine.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So we make everything like it's going to fly, right? Those are the certifications we maintain, and that's how we make them, right? We make them to customer specifications. But it's not that far off. I don't know why it still works. That's a really good question. The price model's still there.
Okay.
And typically in the oil and gas industry, they're going to aerospace companies because they know how to make the turbine engine components, right? They also aren't going to anyone that at least doesn't have their ISO certification. They want people to at least have their ISO, and most people in this arena have their ISO and AS. So you're pretty much at that standard already.
Yeah, well, the cost of that's why it's probably wouldn't be, say, using like a home generator, but when you're looking at an industrial generator,
you're looking at
they don't want those to fail, right? I'm out in the middle of where, obviously I'm not anywhere near power if I need to truck in, a power generator. So at that point, I can't afford for that to fail.
No, yeah, or it's built on site. You're talking about the generator that's like the backup for the power plant. Like this is like, this is massive.
Yeah, failure is not an option.
And what's interesting in the industrial gas turbine for us is that a lot of the generators and the fracking and stuff were done with diesel, and now they're transferring over to turbine because just the power they can cut back on. Instead of having 4, they can use 1. I think right now it's actually 2. There's a new one coming out that they'll be able to go to 1. But so and they can run off any type of fuel, so you don't have to be trucking diesel out to the middle of nowhere. So
instead of using like a diesel burning generator, you're using some other type of fuel. It could be like natural gas or whatever.
Yeah. So they can run off anything. They can I think they run off natural gas. They run off liquid propane. They run off obviously jet fuel. They run off anything.
Amazing. So you said that you transformed the business in the last 5 to 10 years. How so?
So I don't know anything we didn't change, we didn't transform. I guess
Let's start from the beginning.
I guess the culture just got better. We always had a really good crew, family team mentality. Obviously, being a family business, but so yes, I mean we were doing things on paper not too long ago, Excel spreadsheets, and now we are fully integrated. ERP, enterprise resource planning. We are. With one customer in particular that was had an extremely volatile schedule, goodness, we could not keep up. We were late all the time. It wasn't necessarily our fault, but they changed their schedule and we just couldn't react. Now we're like 96% on time delivery, and we were like at 82 before. That was really, we focus on metrics. We have like dashboards for everything. We did everything down to upgrading the power in our facility, upgrading all the infrastructure. We only had 240 electricity, and we decided to go to 480 because we wanted cleaner welds. Upgrading the airlines, upgrading the building, anything you can think of, we've redone.
So you're
if you throw a dart at it, I'll answer and tell you what I did.
Well, look, you said you're a numbers junkie, right? So you started 5-10 years ago saying we need to fix something. What was the original problem statement, and how did you sort of like have the math, the numbers, the analysis support the investment?
Oh, the initial investment?
Yeah. Well, what was the original problem statement? So you started saying what? Like,
we'll think about it. The original problem statement was survival, because I just told you we lost 40% in sales. So we had to lay off. It was survival, right? So it was how do we get there? How do we get there the least expensive, and how do we get there quickly? And then as success breeds success, right? And we got to the next level. It was, what can we do next? How do we reinvest? So we reinvest everything we make back into the company every year. New project, new equipment, 100%. We're not out buying beach houses, but we're young. We're a young group, and our leader, we have a young leadership group, and that was our choice. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to build. We wanted our kid to go to Harvard. We didn't want it to go to community college. Not that I don't love community college, but we really did. We thought of it as a child. And that's
the business as a child.
Yeah.
And just started making those investments one after the other.
One after another.
And everyone just led to more success. So you just kept making more and more investments.
Yeah, and a lot of them lead to you making more money. Let's be clear, like streamlining, so we're at Industry 4.0 right now, right? And it feels like a big thing to take on, but that's going to lead to more money. Investing in your quality systems. First of all, a lot less headaches, but it's going to lead to you making more money. Everything you do leads to it, and then you have more to put back in. You have more to reinvest.
So what do you say to people that are like, oh, we did our ERP project and it just like didn't give us the return that we wanted? Why were you successful when other people haven't been?
Oh, so listen, we joke that we fail first. We almost had to relaunch our entire ERP system because we had never used enterprise resource planning. We had this consultant group come in, and I just don't think we knew what we were getting ourselves into. And we didn't set it up right. We had somebody else, come in. Actually, we hired somebody who was a friend of mine. He had worked somewhere else. He was ready to move on, and he came in and he looked through everything, and he was like, it's worse than you thought. You need to re-implement, and we did. We really ran a full relaunch, re-implementation. And I will say to them, it is worth it. You will get what you want out of it. You just need to make it work for you.
What was the first fail? The first time, to use your words, that failed. What was in hindsight? What would you've done? Let me say it this way. Was there a way to not fail the first time? In hindsight, you look back, go, oh, if we had done this and this, or is that first time failure just like you have to do it because you just don't know what you don't know?
I think there's always a way not to fail. I have to, but it was it was a you don't know what you don't know. Also, we were growing rapidly, and I think we were spread a little bit thin, and we didn't invest the time into making sure the infrastructure was set up right. Basically, we had all this, even like the engineering masters, which is what you use. It's like the recipe to make your part. Mm-hmm. We had them all done, and we put them into the system. And once you're in the system, the order, where you pull things, all those things are very important. We didn't recognize that. I don't know if it's that we didn't know it or we didn't put enough stake into it. And all of that had to be redone for us.
So one of the things that I've seen in my travels on one of the biggest predictors I've seen for ERPs to be unsuccessful, and I'm just curious if this happened to you, is like people try and bend the system to their will instead of saying, okay, this is how the system works. How do we get into the flow of the system? Is that?
Yeah, that happened. And doing stuff outside of the system.
What do you mean?
Like not fully integrating, like us, nothing moves without a transaction. Like nothing moves. If it's not in the system, it's not real. Like I get super angry about it if it happens, just because we've worked so hard, to be a little bit more disciplined. And it still happens. It happens to the best of us, right? Well, customer dropped it on my desk. I don't care. Bring it back to shipping and receiving and log it in the right way. I don't care if they were here with it in their hand, but, so that was a huge tip off, but we're dealing with that at our acquisition right now. So we just acquired another company. It's awesome. We were planning on starting a laser, 5-axis laser division in-house. We placed the purchase order to acquire the 5-axis laser, bring it in. It's a process that we use all the time. We outsource. We're shipping it out of state, and we're going to do this. We're going to bring it on. We're going to get all our certifications. Not even like 3 weeks later, I get a phone call that another company that does that process is up for sale and that we can acquire, there's an opportunity to acquire it. It's actually the people who called me were the previous owners. They had sold it years prior, and they called and said, hey, we have an opportunity to buy our company back, and do you want to do it? And it was like, no hesitation. Yeah. Yes, but I have another laser to go into it, because they also do wire, sinker, EDM, and small hole drilling. So it's not just a laser company. But what to me the allure to that was they already have all their certifications, right? And maybe their sales are down and they kind of got hit hard by COVID and all those things, but those are all things we can change. Those are things we just went through. Maybe there's some we've got this in the bag, but certifications were going to take us 6 months to a year to bring it all on one by one with our small engineering team. We're only 25 people at our facility. So now we're 65 because we purchased another company and got a bunch of new staff. But their ERP system kind of launched, and what's great is they were on the same platform as us. But they launched, and then they had they just never got it off the ground running. So we are there, and we were just there last week for a whole week going current state, future state, working on the ERP system. And so much of it is exactly what you said, is that they're not bending the ERP system to work for them. They're just, it's not a fit, right? Like it's just not set up.
Square peg, round hole, right? They're trying to take their paper process and make the system follow the paper process instead of them embracing how the system works and gaining those advantages.
Oh, and it was great though. It was just so good. There's such a good team there, and we're sitting there, we're in this, and I think they're all realizing how much less time everything is going to take them now, once it's set up right, because there's like 6 extra steps everyone's going through. And, but it was actually cool. It's a cool transformation to do with someone when they see how that works. And they had a little bit, what I would say is they had a soft launch, because it's not that it's not set up right. It's just not fully
working for them. And how much of it is, there's got to, look, let me take a step back. For any system to work, ERP or otherwise, you got to think through the process correctly, i.e. make sure that you're not trying to make the system do something it's not designed to do, right? That's not going to work. Then you've got to actually implement it correctly. And then the third piece is there's got to be like the human will to embrace it, because if you're fighting it, it's just not going to work.
I know. And repeat it, right? Especially if it's a one-off thing that you don't do that often. So I agree 100%. And, that was a challenge for me, learning how to think like an ERP system, thinking about what it can do, and really get the most functionality out of it that we can. And I still think there's more things we could do. We're in the process at BMS, and we're doing it so that we can embrace our acquisition, which is AccuCut, and they're BMS AccuCut now, so that we can pull them in. Is we are integrating all of our tooling into our ERP system, redoing our warehouse, redoing our labeling, redoing everything so that they're all on the routers where they need to be. And then our acquisition, we did this as part of a project because we hadn't done it in our system yet. But our acquisition, they utilize fixtures and tools for everything. So we knew they were going to need to do it, and they had everything, on Excel spreadsheets and paper because they had never integrated it. So I think to myself, we've been on this ERP system for about 5 years. We hadn't done that yet. We hadn't integrated our tooling yet because it felt like a massive project. There's a 5,000 square foot warehouse with massive tools in it that all need to be organized, scanned, and put in there. So that's been our project. That's been our A3, is like what we like to call it, our management team project. So
that's your big management team project, to move that over at AccuCut and at BMS, the original?
Yeah, so BMS phase 1, and then we will be moving AccuCuts into the same environment. And some of the issues we, like how I said, we sat for a week with them and it was really cool to do all those things, is because we're integrating them into our system. So anything that we do just like a tiny bit different but can be done either way, we're doing it the same because that's what you want.
So let's talk a little, you brought up AccuCut, and I just want to kind of flip over to that. There's a ton of companies that are thinking about, what's it like to acquire a business? Should we do it? Should we not do it? You had an opportunity, you just jumped at it, said you didn't even hesitate. Why?
Well, what's funny is two things. About 3 years earlier, when 3.5 years earlier, when we found out they sold, we said, oh man, we wish we could have bought them. And then it was like a couple of years later, the opportunity was there. But I did a flip-flop. So we had discussed purchasing a company, but there wasn't one for sale. I didn't even know where to start to look for one. And instead we started the division of bringing, we're going to start our own division in-house, and then quickly changed our mind once the opportunity presented itself. But sometimes I think an opportunity presents itself and you have to do it. I also think for us, the return on investment was there, right? So they had a healthy backlog for the other processes, and we were busy. So during COVID, the pandemic, we slowed down, as in our aerospace lines dropped, but the rest of our lines picked up because that sales mix we talked about earlier kind of held, which I think is just dumb luck. I don't think anything can be pandemic proof, because a lot of people have asked me, and I've said, I don't think there's any magic sauce here. I just think we got lucky. But we did. And so we saw growth during the pandemic. And when we had focused on our profit margin for a while during that in between. So for us, picking up the laser, the return on investment was there to bring in the process. We were spending a ton of money on it, outsourcing it. It was a specialized process. And then adding the company, when we rolled in what we could bring to it, really, from an acquisition standpoint, it made sense. Plus the timing, while a lot of people in the aerospace industry really suffer, obviously we suffered, and I saw that in our own business. We lost a substantial amount of our aerospace work. That the company we acquired had a pretty high concentration of aerospace work at the time. So that's naturally going to come back, right?
Yep.
That's just a season.
Right. Yeah, if you could just weather to the other side. So you talked about something that I think the corporate word is synergies, right? The idea of right? Yeah. Not to get
that's
corporate
everybody's
speaky.
Favorite. That's
but and I think a lot of times, synergies are sort of like
that's
to use an IT term,
banker.
Vaporware, right? It's sort of there, but it's not there. But what I heard you say was there was a really obvious opportunity, you were going to build this process because you had the work, you were already shipping it out. So now you could sort of ship it out to yourself almost.
Yeah, and whoever bought it was going to become my competition immediately, right? So, I mean, although I'm really against being competitive nature in this industry, but in general, someone else, the opportunity is there. We're going to start this division, and there's the opportunity to purchase this. And if we don't, someone else is going to be doing the exact same thing as us at the exact same time, going after the market share as it's coming back. And they're already going to have the certifications in-house.
Right. So you had some really pretty, it sounds like two really key items, right? One is the work to support. The second one is the certification, so speed up that time. And then the third one is when the aerospace comes back, they're kind of in a position with a history to be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and a fourth is that there are a bunch of customer approvals that I did not have, that this company had. So now I have direct customer, approvals to be able to offer the sheet metal fabrication too as well. And I think I went over earlier, in the conversation, but it takes a long time to build those relationships, and it's a lot of work to just to get from point A to point B of getting there. I think with GE it took a year. Honeywell took a long time. All the primes take a long time.
A year post, the original sort of PO, because that's going to be more than a year probably to try and find someone, get in front of them.
Yeah, a year from point of inception to you're an approved vendor of all the hoops.
From when they say, okay, we want to do work with you, to you being able to get a PO,
a
year.
It was a
and that's
year.
already whatever time it took you to find someone who said, okay, we want to work with BMS Aerospace. Then you still have a year after that.
Yeah, so then I gain all these customers by doing the acquisition. Plus, the whole thing also was it's a pretty cool opportunity. It was a pretty neat opportunity. They were a small family business. And they weathered a storm throughout the pandemic, and they were bought by a very large organization. And the opportunity to purchase it and have it become a small family business again. And at the time when we purchased it, the culture was really, really rough. It was really in the tanks, just because these people had been through almost, they got acquired by another company, and then the pandemic hit right away. Mm-hmm. Everybody was tired, right? Everybody was exhausted. So a company going from a small business mentality to a corporate culture, then hit pandemic, where leaders, we all did the best we could.
Yeah.
Right? We did the best we could.
Not easy.
So I will say, I think we kind of got lucky. So, we purchased them, and we're coming out of the pandemic. The previous owners, who were, I think, third generation, came back, and they're with us. They're working with us to kind of, on the culture, on the engineering side, and on the sales side, to get it going again, which is pretty cool.
So actually, that probably ties into my follow-up, which was going to be, we sort of talked about the opportunities that you saw, but no opportunities without risk. And so I wonder, when you evaluated doing this deal, what were the risks that you identified and said, look, these are some risks, but we're going to be able to mitigate them? And how's that been going? So I think it's been 6 months.
Yeah, it has. Oh, of course, it was a huge risk. So honestly, we purchased a company, because I can't really be any other way, but that was taken on water, right? So we purchased a company that needed an infusion of cash, right? And had a little bit of a culture issue. People were just exhausted. And needed sales, right? Like, everything that could be wrong. Their system wasn't set up right. Anything that could be wrong was wrong there, right?
Right.
Needed a full management team in. So there's a huge risk with it. But the first thing is, can you afford it, right? Can we afford to do it? Can we sustain it for as long as we think the runway is going to be? And do we think we can bring something to the table here? Can we enrich the staff's lives? Can we bring it back to what we think it can be from a service business standpoint? And yes was the answer to all those questions. So we went for it.
And it's paying off.
So far, it's actually right on estimated target. So we've increased our sales month over month. We've increased our sales month over month. We've seen those synergies paying off, right? All of the work that we typically send out, we're now feeding into our own company. What's great is we did a lot of work in the EDM arena as well. So we got to bring that all into our own company, which was a synergy. We weren't even thinking about that. We were just thinking about the laser. That wasn't even on our radar before, the opportunity. And the staff, from like day one till now, they're like happy, they're comfortable. Everyone's like, shoulders are coming down, And I think they're starting to get there's a lot of buy-in, in what we're going to do in the new regime. And now we're on our way with the systems being set up properly, which we've been working on since we got in. Day one, we've been working on it. There's just a lot behind the scenes to get done.
What's your sort of communication style and rhythm to keep everybody on the same page and rowing in the same direction? Because you had something going super well at BMS Aerospace. You got people kind of bought into this, this investment culture, this upgrade culture, this high quality culture, this growth culture. Yeah. Now you've got some distraction to another location, right? Not that it's like, 100 million miles away, but you're dividing up the energy of the same leadership team a little bit. You got to bring some people on the journey that you were already on. You don't want the original business to feel neglected. So kind of what's your strategy to keep them on the same page?
It has been such a dance. That is such a good question. It has been such a dance. So our strategy has been, and sometimes it's to a fault. Like I could spend more time down the hill because BMS is going great, but I don't, because I want to be present. I want people to see I'm there. I want them to know nothing has changed. But it's definitely a dance. We're trying to communicate openly. We're trying to really promote hey, we're all one company. But there's always like one or two at your facility that like just don't have the buy-in, no matter how big or small you are, right? It's just like with, technology, right? The early adopters, you have the let me see how it goes adopters, which we got all those in. And then you have the late adopters, that will
the Luddites that just don't, that are always being like, do you remember when it was on paper? Yeah.
And I think you need that, right? The world takes all kinds. You need all kinds. And in a business, you certainly do. You certainly need people who will tell you, especially if you're in a leadership position, like, you're crazy, you shouldn't do that. You don't need the yes mans everywhere. But yeah, so it's been a dance. We've been trying to have complete open communication. It's hard. I think we can always be better at both facilities. Our entire team is really excited about it so far. I think that in the beginning they were really excited. Then there was like a waning period where it felt like not burdensome, but like everybody got a little bit more work, right? And now they're really excited again. But the joke, like, in our management group is like, oh, all right, so we got BMS going awesome, and now we're just going to start all over again, And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. We were all bored,
We're going to take all of our lessons learned and reapply them and do it faster and better this time.
Yeah, you sound just like me.
Yeah, perfect. So, listen, I know we're kind of running out of time, but I just wanted to have a couple more things. And I've got tons on my list, so we'll have to do another show, Tina. But I just was, curious, like, you must be spending a lot of time sort of like, obviously not technically inside the 4 walls, because now you've technically got 8 walls, I guess, or whatever, right, between 2 different facilities. But you're probably spending a lot more time inside the business, than sort of being outside. And, one of the adages you always hear about, especially in the smaller business arena, is like, you can't get stuck sort of like in your office. You can't get stuck in your building. You've got to be out there. You got to be developing relationships. And I think, frankly, this acquisition opportunity came from you having relationships, not relationships that were inside your business, but relationships outside your business. Your customers, they're outside your business, And so how do you think about that time split? Is it challenging now that you're getting sucked more inside and trying to push yourself out? Like, how are you looking at that?
So it's challenging for me in general, because I want to be inside, I want to be inside, but I know that I'm better outside. I'm not great at being the poster child, it's just not for me, but I know it's important. I really do. I think that the balance is, I'd like it to be 75% inside, 25% out, but I think the balance is better 50-50 at least at a minimum. It probably should be weighed the other way. It's definitely difficult, but I think it's so important. Like you said, the relationships are what make things go. That's how I got this opportunity. Goodness, my relationships in the industry have helped me so much. People in manufacturing in Connecticut are so generous. They will tell you where they stepped in the wrong direction. They will be good to you, and I found that along the way. And every time I've gotten out there, I haven't regretted it. That's for sure. I also think that we're in this weird culture where during the pandemic, you didn't really travel for business. And the question is now, how much of it can be done via Zoom? Because we found out a lot of things that you used to have to fly for can be handled via, over email, which used to kind of be a frustration of mine sometimes with some of our larger customers. But now you also recognize some things can't be. Some things need to be done in person. Sometimes you need to go talk to someone and sit down with them. It's easier to dehumanize people when you're only talking to them via email. It really is. So much of it is, is your own mood, is your own feelings, where you're at. It's not how they are intending to come across at all. When you're on the phone or when you're in person, you can see that, you can feel that it's there, it's real. So I do think it's important to get out there. I am trying to get out there more. I am here today for that reason alone.
Doing great.
I also think, being a woman in business, it's important to get out there and to really.
Is there something that you tell yourself to like psych yourself up to get out? Because I know you're not alone in probably many walks of life, but certainly in this industry of sort of feeling more comfortable in the engineering side, in the details, like sort of being in the building. Is there something that you tell yourself or think about to sort of motivate yourself to do the thing that's not as natural?
Besides that, it's necessary,
That's it. I got to do it. So you just tell yourself, just do it.
Yeah. So I think we're all self-aware, and, everyone you talk to is clearly, esteemed, established, self-aware, intelligent people. And you know what you need to do. It's like any tough decision that you need to make. You wait and wait and wait, but you know the answer, right? So you know what you need to do and you do it. And I think I try and really look at other people that are doing the same thing and say, well, if they can do it, I can too. I also have a lot of close friends that are super networkers, where I am the opposite, introvert, extrovert. But I think it's important. I think it's necessary. And like I said earlier, I never regret it. That's for sure.
That's a great place to leave it. I totally agree. And I'm going to switch to rapid fire round of questions to round it up.
Right.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, Tina. Red Sox or Yankees?
Yankees.
Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Starbucks.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Staycation.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Sports car or SUV?
Ooh, SUV. Because I have to be, but I want a sports car.
Do you have a favorite business book?
I have a few favorite business books. I like anything by Malcolm Gladwell. Right now I'm reading All In, which is really good. I loved The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg as well.
Wow, those are great. That's a plethora of great lists.
I'm an avid reader.
Every once in a while we publish like a list from these questions, like what people say. So we'll make sure those all get on there. That was really, that's good stuff. If you had to do something other than being president of BMS Aerospace, and it could be anything in the whole wide world, what would you do?
Oh, that's a good question. I really like to build things. That's what I like most about being at BMS. I like that we are constantly building on it. We're constantly transforming and all those things. We're taking the old and making it better and better. And not that the old is always bad. So I think I would probably I always wanted to be an attorney, but I don't think I'm going to go back and do that. I think I'd probably like to be like an architect or something.
Wow, that's a great answer. What's something that you learned early in your life or early in your career that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
You got to put in the work. Only ways through.
Only ways through, one foot in front of the other, right? Yep. And what's something, Tina, that you learned later in your career or later in your life that if you went back and told young Tina, and if she'd listened to you, it'd make a real positive impact?
Oh, make the time.
Make the time? Yeah,
make the time for all the things you think you're too busy for.
Like what?
I just think that when I was younger, I was always in a rush to this, rush to that. You know, I wouldn't stay and have like the meaningful conversation with someone. I was off to the next. And I just think it's worth making the time now. I'm older.
Slow and steady wins the race.
You know, what's funny is I have a quote on my wall that says, it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. But that's it. That is what I need to slow down, take a breath, and it's going to get done.
Yeah, got to make decisions quickly. Don't get stuck in paralysis, but at the same time, don't rush.
Yeah, I mean, I got to take that.
Yeah, listen, totally get it. Tina, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks so much for coming out.
Thank you so much. I had such a great time.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by CompassMSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.